So, Gillian, only a few weeks to go to our Minding Autistic Minds Conference, and you're going to present on day two, or you're going to run a workshop on parenting neurodivergently. And we're really looking forward to that. But you also attended last year's conference, and you attended our 2019 in-person conference. And I would love for you to share some of your experiences for maybe people who are thinking of attending, what it was like to actually be in a room that was just so welcoming and so warm and so inclusive.
Yeah, that actually, they're the words that I would have used. It was, do you know what? It was actually such a lovely experience. So the conference back in 2019 was kind of early into my discovery that I was autistic myself, and I hadn't really been in a situation like that before. And I was very nervous because I'm not a big fan. I am actually autistic. I'm not a big fan of going into groups of people I don't know and do small talk and all that kind of stuff. And almost instantly when I arrived, I met with people and connected with them. And I could feel my shoulders relax. And I finally felt, for the first time in my life, I finally felt, I belong. I feel this is great. And so for the conference last year, I was genuinely looking forward to it because I was like, oh well, I've had the experience now. But what I loved the speakers. I loved getting to meet and talk to some of the speakers. But what I genuinely really loved was the little moments, the little connections that people made, the conversations that people were having. Um, I actually actively enjoyed small talk for the first time ever. But it was really lovely. It was really lovely that people were felt comfortable talking and asking questions and discussing stuff with me. Like, because obviously they knew that I was autistic and they were asking me questions about stuff. And I could just see that it was those little moments in between the main thing that really made it for me. Because oftentimes when you go to conferences, and I've had to go to a lot of conferences for work and stuff like that, um, you go in, you sit down, you kind of might say hello to the person beside you, and you're just sitting there and taking in information, and then you kind of awkwardly stand around having a cup of tea. And there was none of that. There was none of that. Like every time there was a speaker finished, like there was a buzz, there was an eruption of chat and everything. And so for me, that's a huge part of it. That extra bit, that extra interaction. Even at lunch, I was sitting with people I didn't know, and we were all chatting away as if we'd known each other for years. You know, that kind of way. So that for me is a really big difference in a lot of the conferences that I've gone to, where it's not just sitting there and it's dry and it's, when you do the bit and you go home and you're exhausted by the end of the day. By the end of this day, we were all so energized. I can't really remember what time we stayed up chatting. Like everybody kind of sat around chatting. Like, do you know what I mean? Like we were like, oh, do you know, it kept going. It didn't finish until we had to be like,
And I
okay.
was wrecked. I was like so tired after the conference
Yeah,
finished. And then it was
I
like,
was
oh, now
like,
I've got to go talk to people. And it was just so,
but even like
so
if
beautiful. Yeah.
I don't want to disclose too much because this was a personal thing.
Yeah.
I got into the lift and this other lady got into the lift and she was like, oh, you join and blah, blah. And we were just having, the little chat. And then she just got really emotional, and was like, this is the first time that I've realized that I'm autistic,
Oh.
from listening to people and everything. I ended up walking her to her car and like, she gave me a hug and everything. Like it was really like I was like, this is not what happens at conferences that somebody gets really overwhelmed, like in a good way, got really overwhelmed and like I can't believe it. I've never felt so included before. I've never felt like I've belonged before. And like I could understand because that was my experience in 2019. But it was just so amazing. It was so amazing that coming to a conference made this person feel so emotional.
And I think that it's very hard to describe what it is because conference is the only kind of word we have to identify it. But it's a real gathering. It's a coming together. It's common interest. It was just like the whole crowd became one. That it just felt like unity. I think that's what it actually is. It's unity. When we talk of people coming together, that's what happened for those 2 days at the conference. That's what it felt like. And it was actually very hard to leave that. It was very hard to kind of
Yeah.
transition back to reality because we had created this beautiful environment, this beautiful sense of
And
togetherness.
you know what I loved as well? There wasn't, because it was, let's be honest, a neurodivergent space, there wasn't that hierarchical kind.
Yeah, no, none of us.
There was none of that because that it really was the way that we like to communicate, that and I know that people talk, we hear a lot about autistic kids and everything, no respect for authority and blah blah blah. there are very much positives to that when you're doing this kind of thing of, you know, we're all here together. We're all here to learn. We're here to learn from each other. We're not, there's no, I'm the expert and you just sit there and listen to me. It was very much,
Oh,
okay,
and that was
things need
so.
to change and how can we work together to help?
And even though, like, that's the thing, even though our presenters were like, like, obviously, in any other context would be called experts, but all we're very clear we're not, because it's so autistic to be like, well, I don't know everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so funny because you're like, people are like, God, you know so much. And you're like, there's more to know.
That's
There's
like,
more.
yeah, it's like, well, there's way more to learn. Learning, never know everything. I know the quest for knowledge, but it was that I know I like a couple of comments that stayed with me was, someone messaging me afterwards saying, I was in a room full of people and I didn't feel like I was in a room full of people, that it
That's,
actually was
yeah.
comfortable. Like, that's amazing. And just that, someone else commented, yes, even though, like, some of the speakers and stuff were very well known, there was no hierarchy. Like, everyone was just chatting away. There was, it's not a formal, stuffy event. I don't think any of us wants anything like that. We are very neurodivergent. We are very much about just, here we are, let's work
To be
together.
honest, I don't think I wore shoes for the entirety of the 2 days.
Yeah.
Do you know, it was just like, that this is cool. I was sitting on a table with my legs crossed. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, just being myself. Or like, do you know what I mean? And people were getting up and walking around. People were, there was no, yeah, it was just, it was relaxed while still being really informative and still really,
Yeah.
and some of the topics were tough, I'm not gonna lie. But, but also there was a relaxed kind of coming together and sharing feel to it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Oh, totally. And I know someone said to me at the end of it, it was like, this is kind of the world we've been robbed of. And it was like, actually, yes, this is just how humans should be with each other. Again, there was people of all neurologies attended. Not everyone obviously was autistic or neurodivergent. It's a welcoming space for everybody. And that's what the word that this is the world we should that so it was kind of, I think everyone got a taste of what like the world could be like
Yeah, it's
without
like
the
when I say,
hierarchy, without
yeah,
the
it's like when I
teaching,
say when I'm
without
to
the
different, yeah.
formality, the
Yeah.
performativeness, or whatever that word would be,
I've
performative.
said it so many times. I've said it to politicians, I've said it in trainings, I've said it all the time. No non-autistic or non-neurodivergent person is going to be harmed by us changing our systems, changing our environments, changing our schools, changing our workplaces to ones that are neuroaffirming, to ones that are actually helpful and actively. But we know the neurodivergent people are being harmed by what is in place right now. But also, doing it this way actually benefits everybody. It actually does.
That
Like,
is it. And I know, but what are people scared of? Making the change. But you see, I suppose as well, and we talk about this often, Gillian, like awesome training and Neuropride that you're involved in is we're very much about real tangible change for autistic people. It's not just put a little box here, a sensory box for us to climb into if we become overwhelmed.
yeah.
Nothing says inclusion like that. And it's not about a tick box exercise or 1 hour training here or, using the right language.
Or
It
even just
is
making
actually about
changes for one person. It's like, no, change for everybody.
for everybody, and it is, well, it's hard work, let's be honest. It takes time. You
Yeah.
have to dismantle your bias, you have to evaluate the society you live in, you have to look at yourself, you have to look inward and look outward. And I think that's what the conference and did for people last year. It was, and very much doing it together, because we know it's hard and we know it's
It's
scary, and I
hard
suppose
work. It
we've had
really
to do
is.
that
So you have to look
ourselves.
into things like intersectionality and like, okay, who isn't here? Who isn't being included? What voices are not being heard? You have to look at historically, and it's hard. It's hard to look at society and go, we have really not been very nice to people, and we all have a bit of blame to do in that we haven't been fighting enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's that kind of thing of thinking about these things and thinking about wider concepts and how they're impacting on disabled people, neurodivergent people, and stuff like that. And so that's what I was saying. Some of the topics weren't. It wasn't all springtime lollipops and rainbows,
Probably not.
but it was done in a way that was bringing people in rather than going, here's all the things you're doing wrong and you're terrible humans. It's not about that. Nobody wants that because that's not going to change anything for anybody.
And
It's
I
about,
think it just demonstrated the empathy of autistic people. Like, when I really think about it, it was autistic
mm,
people standing up and helping other people to look at us in a different light. Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's, I think, such an amazing illustration of what autistic empathy looks like. It's not about shaming people, giving out to people. Yeah, we
Yeah.
get annoyed from time to time. Of course we do, it's constant. But it really, when you get the time to do it and do it right, it is about actually guiding that person, to
Yeah.
treat us and
And
our.
we've talked about this as well.
Yeah.
Autistic adults, neurodivergent adults, the people who do the work that we're doing, um, are doing it because we want other people's children and our own children, but we want children to not have to grow up to have these conversations, to have these fights, to have these, but we want them to grow up in a society that accepts them, that understands them, and values them. And I think that's key. You can have all the awareness and all the, if we don't have a society that actively values people,
Yeah.
then that's not, it's not sustainable. And I think that's why the things like the conference are really important, because it shows people how valuable the neurodiversity paradigm is. This acceptance that there are so many different ways for brains and neurotypes and people to be and exist, and it's all equally valid. Not one's better than the other or anything like that. It's all equally valid. And I think that's sometimes you can you can say all the words you want, but sometimes people need to see it and be in it and be
And
surrounded by it
feel
and go
it
be
and
and
feel it.
genuinely feel it and be like, oh,
I understand.
now I understand. And I think that's what the conference gave a lot of people was. And I remember talking to a couple of people who were professionals who've been counselors and teachers and stuff like that. And them talking about, I thought I knew. I thought I knew. I thought I was being neuroaffirming. I thought I was. But actually, I now see that there's things I could be doing. There's things that do you know what I mean? There's ways that I can change and it'll actually make my practice better, but it'll also improve things for the people that I'm working with.
Yeah.
And small things, like it wasn't like they had to go back and right, back to the drawing board, scrap all this. It was more like, oh, I can give myself permission to follow that gut instinct that I've kind of been like, the society's been telling me, no, I have to tell parents to do this, I have to do this, I have to blah, blah. No, I actually, now I can actually give myself permission to go, no, actually, this there is a better way, and I was right, there was a better way. Because obviously people were coming to the conference because they had that kind of feeling anyway, that something needs to change and I want to know how to change it. But yeah, I think that was a great thing that happened as well, that people giving themselves permission to make those changes, because change is hard. Change is hard. Being a change maker and being a cycle breaker is difficult. It's really,
Well,
really hard.
I
So
mean, we are trying to disrupt. Well, I mean, it has to happen, and it is like let's be honest, because the work. I think that's it, though. I think I was thinking about my own journey in advocacy. It's like if whatever 11 years ago, it was like, oh, autism acceptance. Yeah, I thought it was like, oh, accept autism. Accept this diagnosis, accept that autistic people are this way. We have these deficits, but like let's include us and take account for these deficits. That was kind of step one. Then I was like, oh no, this is not what this is about at all. This is about questioning the way we've been pathologized and our differences have been magnified, and we've literally been oppressed, marginalized, abused, experimented on, and murdered in some cases. And
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 and our
then
depressed behavior is seen as willful or
oh,
yeah.
and then you're like, oh, okay. So then you go, oh, and then you're like, oh, we have to tackle behaviorism, behavior therapies and stuff,
Mm.
therapies. And then you're like, oh no, we live in a behaviorist world. Now we got to change people's attitudes. And then you just realize how big this issue is. And then you know what? You realize it's the ableist. You look at the wider disabled community and you're actually just like, and I suppose for me, there was a lot of shame in that. It was like, I was ableist, absolutely. I didn't know, do you know what I mean? Not any of the struggles of the autistic community or disabled people in general. And it was just like, how did I live my life so privileged? How did I do this? So there's a
A
lot of
lot to
steps in
unpack.
it. And
Yeah,
I feel some people are getting to this level one. Yeah, sure, everyone should be accepted no matter what condition they have. And it's like,
yeah,
go
yeah.
further, go
Yeah,
up the higher, do
but
the
it
work.
is.
Yeah.
It's not easy work. Like that's the thing. It's not easy work. It's not hard. It's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. And that's what it is. It's not
Uncomfortable
actually.
to look at yourself and go, oh. until it affected me, I didn't really think about this
Yeah.
deeply and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I do. I, as you know, I'm board secretary for Disabled Women Ireland as well, so I would be in the advocacy space and stuff like that. And the most important thing in that advocacy space is going, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. And if somebody pulls me up on something, not to let my rejection sensitivity kick in and be like, ugh, is to go, do you know what? I will go and I will learn. And then when I learn, to absolutely butcher a quote by Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. And for me, that's what this conference is about. It's not going, oh my God, you terrible human, here's all the things you were doing wrong. It's about, we're going to try and help you to know better so you can do better.
And,
That's for me the gist of
and
it.
and acknowledging that we are all evolving and learning and growing.
Oh
And
yeah, there's
for
absolutely,
me,
there is,
you kind of get used to that feeling of discomfort because it becomes
yeah,
you recognize it as a sign of growth. And like I get quite excited. Yeah, there's that challenge in the RSC that when
yeah.
oh no, not this some other bit, but the freedom that comes with it. And I don't think people talk about that enough. People talk about change being hard, but actually once you get over that hurdle, there's such freedom in it. There's such a different perspective, and there's such beauty, I think, in growing as a human being that we don't. It's not part of our culture to talk about things in that way, because obviously it suits, society to
Mm,
keep people kind of stunted when we're all here to grow really and
mm.
support each other to grow. Well, that would be my way of looking at the world and my perspective. But yeah, that's what it's about. It's a space where people can come together and grow really. And I suppose being there in person is amazing. I know obviously look, organizing a conference is a very expensive affair so which means we have to charge for tickets, but hopefully the online version as well is going to be accessible to people and
You know
just
what? And the online version, that's what I was gonna like say about it. The online version was great because you had instant access to, I know we said we don't like to call ourselves experts or anything, but let's be honest, Mackie is an expert. So um and Mackie was able to have, like, you should have seen the conversation Mackie
I
was having
know.
in the chat and stuff like that of, do you know, a speaker might say something and somebody might be like, oh, I don't really know what they're talking about, blah. And Mackie's like, well, and I was able to explain and expand and give links and do you know what I mean? Like, and that's invaluable. That's invaluable to have access to somebody who is so knowledgeable. Like they've been involved in the autistic, particularly advocacy
Yeah.
for something like 30 years. Like, do you know what I mean? They were
Uh,
there at the birth of the sort of internet and they literally have many, many spreadsheets, but a directory of terms from the autistic community that have been developed over the years. They have so much information, so much knowledge, so much, it literally like having like on tap, and you just can't get that. Like, do you know what I mean?
no, no, and we're so
If you
lucky
were actually
to.
charging, if you were actually having to charge for Mackie's information and stuff like that, people couldn't afford it. Like
No, no,
the
no, no. Like it's
wealth
just
of
yeah,
information.
it is.
Yeah,
I don't know what the word for it is, but yeah, there's just it's. I mean, just I suppose we can just call Mackie Google sometimes because I
yeah,
don't.
encyclopedic knowledge, like
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah, yeah,
on so many topics. Like it's just, yeah,
yeah.
it's it's fascinating to have conversations with Mackie about this kind of stuff, and like myself.
Absolutely. And the perspective, and I suppose, look, I think, yes, that, let's be honest, I think we mentioned that at last year's conference. I think Kieran Rose said it, how much Mackie had influenced our perspectives. Because let's be honest, I think Mackie was the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
person I ever heard saying autistics are human. And, again, I had to hear it probably 50 times before I actually went, oh, I
yeah.
understand what
I know
they're
what you're saying.
saying.
Yeah, yeah.
We're just human beings. Okay. We're like, it just literally took so long because of the oppression, because just to, I had to remove so much of the thinking, the layered thinking. But and we're giving Mackie a break this year because I actually did. Mackie wasn't really. Obviously, they were physically at the conference, but because they were online looking after all the online people and all the chat and everything, they really weren't at the conference, even though they were sitting in the room. So this year, Aoife, that is working with us and obviously works with Purpose, but is going to do that. Day one is going to be there with people online and managing the chat and everything.
Yeah, Eva's great. Yeah.
Aoife is also great a mini encyclopedia because no one's going to be at the level.
No,
And Mac is going to be
Eva's
online.
too young to be at the level of Mackie. They don't have the
Exactly. But it's yeah, so Mac will be looking after people on day two. And I think that's important for people to know. It is interactive and people online got to ask questions and interact as well. It's
Yeah, it
not just
wasn't just
watching it.
like the people online just sat there and watched. There was the
Yeah.
chat was,
Flying.
oh,
Yeah.
the chat was like poor old Mac, in fairness, poor old Mac Tapping away the whole
We
time,
had
yeah.
a couple of people sure who watched day one online and then arrived in person. They were like, I was watching online, I just had to come in person. So
Yeah, that was so funny. The amount of people that come up to me was like, I wasn't here yesterday, but I was watching online, but then like, I had to come. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. So I look, we're supposed to have a couple of minute chat. This has gone on for probably longer than that, but I really enjoyed it. And I think, look, that it's just really hard to describe it. It's really hard, like it is and the feelings that I think I felt during those few days, there aren't words for it because I just hadn't like, do you know what I mean? We just haven't experienced that. I mean, safe, comfortable, welcomed, fitting, what belonging. I think
Yeah.
all of those, like all of those words, and so immensely proud, as in the real sense of proud, not kind of proud of someone, like actual pride in ourselves and who we are, and just yeah, it was just cathartic. I felt
Yeah.
like definitely for me there was healing over those 2 days. Like it was, yeah, and you could see it. I know someone else said that it was like you could literally just kind of witness the collective, like that, people's shoulders relaxing, people letting go of stuff. Just yeah, it's a very unusual event. Let's face it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's not. And I've gone to autism conferences and stuff like that. I've even gone to autistic, another conference, and it's just different for some reason. I don't know. It's just it kind of just gels people together or something. So, and that was my fear actually last year because the 2019 conference was obviously in distant memory at that stage. But I was so
Hmm.
afraid. I was like, what if we can't like recreate the same feeling?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, well, it's going to be different. It's okay. It'll be a different feeling. But actually, it just happens. It just comes together. But I do think it is the kind of friendliness and openness of everyone involved. Do you know what I mean? It's just from the minute
Yeah.
people come
Yeah, I
in.
do think that was it, that everybody was just like having the chats and talking to each other. And yeah, like I said, the whole room would erupt into.
Yeah, I think, and I remember someone saying that to me. They were like, well, when I arrived and I saw you wearing a t-shirt, I was like, ah. Do you know, there wasn't a suit in sight.
No, actually, I think Owen might have been the only person that got close, and he was just wearing a shirt, wasn't wearing a suit.
Maybe no, yeah, very,
Yeah.
and that's it, I suppose. Like we're not about um performing. It's about being very real and getting to the real issues and being open and honest and bringing people with us. So, Gillian, thank you so much. It's been such a fabulous chat. We're really looking forward to the conference. Now I'm like super excited about it because I'm remembering all last year. So, thank you so much for your time. And for anyone who's interested, Gillian is presenting on neurodivergent parenting neurodivergently on day 2, which would be really invaluable for parents, obviously carers, foster parents, and guardians, and white grandparents and families, but also people who support professionals, maybe who support parents. It's really important to have this neuroaffirming way of supporting parents as well. And obviously the conference is on for 2 days. Day 1 focuses on the supporting adult autistic mental health, and day 2 supporting children's autistic mental health. And we have a few kids who are coming along this year, including my own. So I'm really excited about that as well. So it's going to be a fantastic event for everybody. Gillian, thank you so much for your time and for making me so excited now about the whole thing again.